Unit 2. Unit 2 discusses voicing in English. Voicing is one of the three defining features of the sounds of English. It creates a difference in meaning between words, and this outcome is what determines a phoneme versus an allophone, which we're going to look at in more detail later. But for example, the following word pairs, which we are going to start using later on as minimal pairs, are all different in meaning by only one sound, regardless of the spelling. The stops P and B, for example, create a different meaning in the following words: Pete versus beat, pit versus bit, pate versus bait, pet versus bet, pot versus bot, pat versus bat, and so on and so on. What is voicing? It is found in all the languages of the world, and it's created by air passing through the vocal folds, which is right here. And this air causes these folds or chords to vibrate, much like the string on a guitar when it vibrates makes noise or sound. Okay, this is a buzzing sound, which is pretty easy to hear. For example, ah, ah, that's pretty easy to hear. And this sound is added to consonants and vowels. And which one, voice or not? Well, the brain decides that depending on the specific words. In English, about 2/3 of all the sounds are voiced and 1/3 voiceless. To elaborate upon that, all vowels are voiced, as well as nasals, liquids, and approximants. Only stops, fricatives, and affricates can occur in both voiced and voiceless form. Voicing in stops is somewhat complicated. But before we get to that, let's take a deeper look at the vocal folds. Here we have the vocal folds in closed position. See, closed glottis. And this would be when you are producing a stop with the vocal folds. So or so hear that little that's when I open the glottis and the air comes out. Here is an open glottis, so the air is simply flowing through. Voicing, air only. So as these vocal folds here vibrate, see, to create that buzzing. So vocal folds vibrate, producing a buzzing sound. This buzz is added to the airstream and produced by it, meaning the vocal folds. Voicing in stops is complicated, as I said, and I want to show that with voice onset timing. But first, why is it complicated? Well, by definition, a stop is a complete blockage of the air. No air flows during the time of the closure. But that means that the vocal folds cannot vibrate. Well, how can you have a voice stop when the vocal folds cannot vibrate? And this is important because in English, we have all the stops and fricatives as well as affricates, both voiced and voiceless. So we have to understand how this works. And the answer comes in what we call voice onset timing. So notice we have S, Z, B, and P. So 2 stops and 2 fricatives. Now, for a fricative, and by the way, I have to explain this. This is a representation of the energy in the air. So after the sound has come out of the mouth, you can measure it on a machine and you can find out how much energy is present. So this would be a vowel, consonant, vowel. All right. So like asa. And this is the consonant. And so down here, vowel Z, vowel B, vowel P. And so you can see how the consonants are quite different from the vowels. But be that as it may, let's just concentrate on S, Z, B, P. Now, S, as we said before, is a fricative and produces turbulence or hissiness, friction. Okay, and it's represented here by this sort of blotchy looking stuff. Now, a Z, interestingly enough, isn't as blotchy because it's got voicing added to it. So zzz, there's still some friction, but the voicing creates, and notice how that looks a little bit more like the vowels, see? Which is why voicing, all vowels are voiced, so voicing looks a little bit more like a vowel. Now let's go to the voiced and voiceless stops, and things are going to be quite a bit different. Why? Because this means, oops, sorry. This means, this steady line means no sound. The stop is stopped. And so the vowel on either side, you can see it. With a B and a P both, the sound is stopped. So how can you hear the difference in voicing? And the answer is, in B, the voice starts up again quickly. So you have to look at this difference right here. This versus this. The B means as soon as the lips open, the voicing starts right away. So timing, voice onset timing. Whereas for the P, there is a period of voicelessness, a little tiny bit of energy, but that's almost inevitable when you release the lips. But there's still a delay in voicing, and the voicing starts here. So voice restart delayed. A little turbulence, that's kind of what I was talking about there, but not voicing. All right, so to review, fricatives, friction only if it's voiceless, friction and voicing if it's voiced. B, lips closed, it's a stop after all, no noise. Then voicing starts immediately when you release the lips, and this is the voiceless stop, where there is a delay before the voicing begins. And see, both of these can be heard easily by the brain. And that's how we know the difference between a voiced and voiceless stop. Now let's review. We've already talked manners, stop, affricate, fricative, nasal, and then the approximants. These are the old names for the approximants. Notice this chart shows us voiced, voiceless, and that now we can get at this important parameter, because the first parameter was manner, the second parameter is voicing. So P and B, appa, abba, atta, adda, akka, agga, and then let's do the fricatives next. Affa, avva, atha, adha, asa, azza, asha, aja, aha. No voiced, so I can't do the voicing there. The nasals, ama, ana, anga, and then w, o, ya. And so the only voicing differences we find are fricatives, affricates, and stops. And the affricates, of course, are ch and j. And there you can have a voicing difference. But notice that since these are the stops, and there's a stop here, how do you hear the difference between these voicings? That's what we just explained with voice onset timing. You can hear the difference because the D, the voicing starts immediately. Here in ch, the voicing is delayed. Okay, this is a somewhat technical definition, but I think it's important to understand that stops are stops, as the name implies, but the voicing on them can be somewhat critical because of this voice onset timing. And since many of our students who are trying to learn English come from languages where they don't have this same pattern, there's a teaching moment there. All right, let's go on. Here are the references for the charts that you just saw. And if you wish to pursue that further, you can see how they treat this particular concept. All right, that concludes Unit 2.